Hello and welcome back once again to CBR MTG. We are at the top 8, round 1 of CANCON 2019 National Highlander Championships. I'm joined here by Philip Nicholson.
Hello.
And we are watching Justin on Rug Life versus Gideon on Abzan Midrange. Phil, do you want to go through Rug Life, maybe its inception, and then we'll sort of talk about how it ticks?
Sure. So Rug Life is just a blue, red, and green tempo deck. It's seen a couple of people take cracks at building things kind of like this over the years, but maybe a year or so ago, Sarvin McClinton put together this list, which I think is exactly the one that Justin's playing, but there could be a few changes. And this list performed pretty well. So a couple of people have kind of picked up playing it at various events.
Yeah.
You just want to lay down some kind of threat on the early turns, something like a Tarmogoyf or a Young Pyromancer, coast through the mid-game with some counter magic, and then close the game out with a bit of burn.
Yeah. This deck playing Price of Progress as well, of course, like just a couple of little bits and bobs that help it just gain the tempo, as we mentioned before. And it's seen quite a few pilots on CanCon weekend. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 people piloting this deck, probably just liking the look of it, liking the fact that it's like just staples, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were 2 copies in the top 8, Justin and also Tim, who's not on this coverage, but he was also in top 8 playing a Rug Life deck. So clearly it got something going for it.
Yeah,
it's made it this far.
Sarvin's onto something, I think, with this deck, because everyone seemed to very much enjoy it. Going to our opening hands now, I can see a Fire Ice in Justin's hand, and obviously this Deathrite Shaman coming out, but not a whole lot else. I think there might be a Gush in there as well, which could be pretty big game in those late games if he can find those islands.
Yeah, and Gideon's opening with Temple Garden into Mother of Runes, which is not a sloppy start on his end either.
No, definitely not. We see sort of 2 sort of haymakers from each player. Like when you're playing a fair deck, those first pinnacle turns are actually very important. You know, we're playing 2 of the best 1-drops in the format on our first turns, so this is like pretty powerful magic that's happening right here.
Yeah, particularly when it's a fair deck mirror. Kind of in the first few turns, you don't expect to pass the turn and just die. So developing your board state with these kinds of really powerful creatures is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Justin going for a little bit of red mana now. He has the perfect mana, and he does have that island in hand for the Gush later on. Probably taking time to set it off a little bit later, but pumping off this fire from the Fire and Ice before Mother of Runes can untap seems to be a pretty big game as well.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time since I've actually seen a Mother of Runes ever tap to activate her ability. She just seems to die a lot.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is that if it doesn't die and you get to untap with it, then sort of things start to go a little bit more in your favor. You know,
sure.
Just being able to protect it.
The card is definitely a target for lightning bolts because it is incredibly powerful if it untaps.
Absolutely.
So Gideon's fetching up a second land here.
Yeah, it looks like
probably off to find a bay off that would have foothills.
Yeah, seems reasonable. Now he's got access to all 3 of his colors, as does Juzza, and he's obviously stating that he's going to go for that Abrupt Decay on the Deathrite Shaman. So yeah, I mean, same with the Mother of Runes. Kind of has a lightning bolt on its head just because of the sheer power of those 2 cards. Like, it's probably better to get rid of them sooner rather than later.
Sure. Justin is a bit ahead here. His Deathrite Shaman did crack in for 1 damage in his last combat step, so
which is very important.
Well, I mean, when you also count the fact that Gideon had to pay for a shock on his first turn, that is actually a pretty big life difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And this game is going to be dealt with nickels and dimes. You know, these are tempo deck versus mid-range. Like, no one's just going to 20 the other person. You know, it's about getting that incremental advantage over the course of the game, which is a true testament to both these players, because both standard and limited grinders as well, they're both very attuned to high-quality competitive magic. And I think these decks are probably pretty well suited to them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Gideon doesn't play Highlander events that much, but every time I've seen him playing a Highlander event, he's playing some kind of Abzan midrange deck, and it's definitely a style of deck that he plays in other formats too.
Yeah.
Like Modern and Standard when he can. So it's certainly something that he's very accustomed to.
I think with the singleton nature of Highlander, you do put yourself at an advantage by playing decks that just have good cards. Like, you're less inclined to go for more synergistic lines, or you're just like combo was heavily underrepresented at CanCon this year, and I think a lot of people just wanted to play the best cards in the colors they chose.
Sure, yeah, I think that's definitely true. Having access to cards that are just good is it's really nice. It means that it's much rarer that you feel like you've been variant out of the game. It's also, it's just that happens less. You don't have to worry about your opponent's hate cards as much. You just kind of do your thing, and you can expect almost every game of Magic you play with that deck to play out in a reasonably similar fashion, rather than having to think through all these different lines and complicated interactions every single game. So these aren't brainless decks by any stretch of the imagination.
Definitely not.
But you expect that all of your cards will do the same thing every time, rather than having some kind of weird cards in your deck for incomprehensible reasons, which is kind of what you can see from a lot of combo decks.
Absolutely.
It can be very difficult to intuitively understand why cards are in those decks, whereas here, everything, it just makes sense and it all fits together nicely.
We see that's a very good point. We see a Council's Judgment coming out of Gideon's side. Good protection for the Trina Nemesis that Justin just drew and I assume is about to play. One of the greatest cards in the format, Trina Nemesis, and one of the most played cards in the format as well, considering its sheer power and just the ability to have that one creature and try and protect it. Like, it's been played in many decks in the format. So I think Gideon's pretty happy to have that answer in his hand immediately.
Yeah, I mean, Trina Nemesis, it's a really powerful threat. It goes in any fair blue deck pretty reasonably for just 1 point, and it has an advantage over a lot of other blue-pointed cards in that it's reasonably accessible. It doesn't cost upwards of $1,000 to buy, like a Time Walk might.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you wanna spend a point on True Name, you're not gonna break the bank to do so. It doesn't really seem like that's top of Justin's mind, given his black-blooded volcanic island. But
it is foil,
I think it's certainly a consideration for some people. And Council of Judgment is just an incredible white spell that can deal with basically any permanent.
So True Nemesis, for anyone who doesn't know, is a 3/1, but it has protection from chosen player. So anything that player plays, any spells that they cast, and any creatures that they have is basically negated by True Nemesis. However, with the conspiracy cards, they came out with Will of the Council, which means that you vote for which card that you want to delete, and because it doesn't actually target, it kind of gets around the True Nemesis rule pretty well. Legacy staple in Death and Taxes, and kind of really Highlander playable as well, considering how powerful True Nemesis is.
Well, even if you're not worried about True Nemesis, white 1 to exile essentially target non-land permanent is insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty comparable to something like Maelstrom Pulse, which sees a decent amount of play in Highlander, except that this is only one color. So it means that it can go in basically any fair white deck. And you can always have something that is problematic that you need to throw it at. And in a format like Highlander, having a card that can deal with problem artifacts and problem enchantments and problem planeswalkers, but also deal with creatures when those cards aren't in play, and being able to play that card main board is just really valuable. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just the utility, I suppose. Like I mentioned in a previous episode, talking about the relevance of split cards and modal spells, because it's just nice to have a card that does multiple things, even if you have to pay a little bit more to do it. And Council's Judgment is kind of the secondary version of those spells because it's a catch-all, which I think is very important.
Yeah, so here we've got Justin playing out a Scavenging Ooze into getting the Scavenging Ooze and opting to immediately activate it on the Mother of Runes in graveyard so that we don't have Gideon untapping and being able to activate in response and fighting over I think Mother might be the only creature in a graveyard because all Justins have been exiled for various reasons.
Yeah.
So I think that, opting to do that is a pretty heads-up play. It does mean he's got less mana open to either interact with Gideon or bluff interaction with Gideon. There's a lot of value just having blue oppen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your opponent has to respect counterspell even if you don't have it.
I think it was very. I mean, it was a very strong line because Gideon's best threat right now is the Scavenging Ooze, but it's not better than Justin's Scavenging Ooze.
Well, I mean, this is a pretty good threat.
Oh yeah, now we're talking.
It's going to struggle to race the true name is the only problem. Just because Gideon's only on 7, and Justin has a pretty hefty life buffer. Gideon might be hoping that Justin kind of takes 2 turns off with the true name to actually finish the Elspeth off rather than just going for the face. But
which I think you just got to do the maths on that one, right? Like I think he's definitely much more inclined to just keep chipping in with True Name Nemesis because the difference between 4 turns and 6 turns is actually huge. It's actually 3 turns. With
it's 3 and 5.
Yeah, 3 and 5. Yeah.
I think that Justin just doesn't have to be that worried about something happening to True Name now that the Council Judgment is gone. So there's just and Elspeth doesn't represent a huge amount of damage out of nowhere, and so I think that he's cast this Goblin Guide, and I would assume that he is just cracking all these creatures in her face.
Yeah.
Goblin Guide revealing a Dromoka's Command.
Yeah, very nice. It could be helpful for later, but Dromoka's Command kind of better when you're ahead. Being behind and getting the benefits from Dromoka's Command not as good as when you're on the offensive.
It is a nice bit of insurance against Price of Progress. It does have the often overlooked mode of preventing damage from an instant or sorcery.
Oh, that's very good, yeah.
But, yeah, I think that just with the onboard power that Justin has, it's not really going to help that much in the long term.
And it looks like Justin's kind of burying him under card advantage at the moment with 3 cards to Gideon's 1. The Planeswalker will accumulate some value for Gideon over the course of the game, but it doesn't look like there's too much more game to be had in this game at the very least.
Yeah, there's only 4 life left to Gideon's name, so he's probably expecting he has 2 turns at best, and more likely 1 if any burn spell can back up this true name.
Yeah, we haven't seen too much burn spell coming out of Justin's deck. It is very interesting deck, including the Goblin Guide as sort of the pinnacle 1-drop red spell that he's going to use to sort of hamper down his burn package that he does have a little bit of, but so far it's just been nice big creatures,
Yeah, he did play a Fire Ice pretty early into the game.
Yep.
But there's only so many kind of top tier burn spells you can play in Highlander when you're not sort of all in on burn as a strategy. Like no one wants to be playing your Searing Spears and Incinerates. You're kind of only playing them if you feel like you have to.
Yeah, or it's your main strategy.
Yeah,
like you definitely have the capability to, but there's no point when there's such better cards in other colors.
Exactly. If you're in these other colors and you feel like you've got the density of burn that you need, then why not just only play the Lightning Bolt and the Fire Ice.
Yeah, I think so. The Lightning Bolt, Fire Ice, Price of Progress, those sorts of things being much higher value than the sort of little bits and bobs that you can find along the way. Like you just can't play Shock in this format, because it's just too strong. It looks like Gideon's going for the +1 counter Fight.
Yeah,
if those are the 2 modes.
Justin then had Scavenging Ooze eat a creature in response, so that the Scavenging Oozes would trade.
Okay. Which is probably reasonable. Gideon probably saw that coming, but I think he maybe wants to keep the random map alive just because it's a little bit bigger at the moment. And he's kind of holding down the fort. I mean...
no, so what he did was that he plussed Elspeth to pump the Scavenging Ooze, and then Dromoka's command to counter on Ramanap Excavator and fight Scavenging Ooze to Scavenging Ooze.
Oh,
was
okay, sure.
The full sequence of plays.
Sure. Well, that works out pretty well, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to keep this Tree Name at bay, and so he's going to be taken down in game 1.
Yeah. Going into sideboards now, we have on Justin's side, 1 Abrade, 1 Anger of the Gods, Arc Trail, Blue Elemental Blast, Destructive Revelry, Flusterstorm, Hydroblast, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Relic of Progenitus, Seed Time, Submerge, Sylvan Library, Tormoid's Crypt, and Trigon Predator. What do you think he might be bringing in on this one?
Yeah, I think a lot of those cards definitely have some relevance. Abrade can deal with a creature, and it would be pretty reasonable to suspect cards like Umazal's Jedi and Skullclamp to be potentially appearing in Gideon's deck. Anger of the Gods is a good Wrath that cleanly deals with creatures like Kitchen Finks and Strangleroot Geist, as well as just most of the creatures that Gideon is playing. Submerge is obviously a massive shoe-in against any green creature deck. It's kind of what you're playing the card for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Justin brought in the Submerge quite a few games over his weekend. But on Gideon's side, he has the Anguished Unmaking, Corsair of Crewfix, Dark Blast, Dismember, Aether Sworn Canonist, Fatal Push, Golgari Charm, Croson Grip, Rest in Peace, Shriekmaw, Sigarda Host of Herons, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Throne the Last Troll, Tide, Hollow Sculler, and Tireless Tracker. I think possibly, and we see what they're siding in now. But I think the Golgari Charm as extra protection from True Nemesis seems to be pretty reasonable. Maybe even some manner of Shriekmaw and Tireless Tracker as well. Like, you're trying to get that card advantage and get that like the card advantage from Tireless Tracker might be good enough, but I mean, he's definitely looking forward to. He's not playing the control matchup, right? He's it's only got a couple of counter spells.
No, but I think that a lot of the decisions you make are along similar lines. I think Thalia is definitely a very powerful card to bring in this matchup.
Oh, 100%.
It makes all of Justin's instants and sorceries just so much more miserable to cast, as well as just being a pretty effective creature in combat against a lot of threats. Like, you never want to attack your Goblin Guide into Thalia. It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
Throne the Last Troll is a pretty decent creature that Justin can't really interact with in
and it's pretty big as well.
Yeah,
I mean, it defends off a Tarmogoyf for the most part.
Yeah, definitely.
Seems like he brought in a Sigarda Host of Herons as well, which is probably pretty reasonable. You don't have to be scared of edicts in Rug, but just having that extra little lick of protection against burn and just having a big flyer is pretty good as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Going into game 2 now, we'll see what works out, but I can definitely imagine Justin wanting to bring in more removal. Definitely the Submerge, as we mentioned before. I don't think Sylvan Library has its place here. I think Justin's probably okay to be the control person in this matchup, so playing the Sylvan Library might not be required because he's already got enough card advantage.
No, I mean, Sylvan Library is definitely a card that you be bringing in against control.
Yeah.
I don't know that he would feel that he needs it in this kind of matchup.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of their opening hands. Gideon with look, a couple of little bits and bobs. Not much that you can see from here until we go to the hand cams.
Definitely a Batterskull. Path to Exile.
I don't know. How do you feel about Batterskull in this format? I think it's like, I mean, for me,
it's got its ups and downs. So I think that it's a pretty powerful threat a lot of the time, but obviously there's a lot of very powerful artifact removal that gets played in the format with things like Braid and Colligan's Command, and having your 5-drop so cleanly answered like that is really awful. Dodging the creature removal is obviously great, but the fact that artifact is a card type that can definitely be destroyed in Highlander. sometimes pretty easily.
Yeah, sometimes mainboard as well. I mean, a lot of decks playing, as you said before, Colligan's Command and Abrade just because they're modal. You know,
Yeah,
they're versatile.
And the same is true of things like Reclamation Sage and Night of Autumn.
Yeah.
It's pretty common. It's pretty common these days that most fair Highlander decks will have several ways mainboard of interacting with those artifacts.
Yeah.
Seeing a couple of sideboard cards coming out already. There's the Courser of Crucifix from Gideon and the Golgari Charm on top. There's also a Submerge on Justin's side. He's probably either waiting for an opportune moment to get some damage through or wreck combat, or possibly waiting for a fetch land from Gideon, because you can always submerge a creature in response to a cracked fetch to kind of get rid of it for good.
It's counts as a removal spell if you're putting it on top of the library and then you're shuffling it away. Definitely an interesting line that would, as we said before, the decks benefit good players, and I have no doubt that Justin has that in his mind as something that he might want to be doing with against Gideon. But
yeah, he's chosen to wait for draw step to submerge here, just for that extra bit of information about knowing that there's a Green Suns next. And Gideon not having a land drop here is just the best possible outcome. It means that nothing's really coming out. Like he's representing Abrupt Decay and similar kind of instant speed removal, but there's no threat coming down, which is really nice for Justin, because kind of it's always a bit more difficult to get on the front foot as a tempo player when you're on the draw compared to being on the play, and having kind of this turn off from Gideon really helps him accomplish that.
I mean, this is a huge turn for him, right? Because he's got Courser on top, he's got Green Sun Zenith on top of that, but he doesn't have the third mana, so he could be stuck on this mana. And it seemed pretty powerful when we started. I mean, this was probably a pretty good line from Justin, but it kind of just worked out perfectly for him, because he's mana screwed, and he thought that the Corso Crucifix would get him out. And when you see it being played on turn 2 with the help of Deathrat Shaman, feels pretty good. But then when you miss your third land drop, it can get a little bit iffy from here.
Yeah, I mean, we also saw a pretty nice bit of synergy between Submerge and Goblin Guard. Justin could kind of just crack in with Zero Fear, because he knew that the card on top was Corso, and he knows that the next card is Green Sun Zenith as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You can just kind of
just go gung ho.
He just doesn't care at all.
There's just no downside.
Yep.
Yep. Reveals the Green Sun Zenith. Takes the extra 2.
It's just free information. Cards all upside.
I had a couple of Goblin guys been played against me on the weekend, and you can tell when someone owns a good Goblin Guide, because all they do is it's a 2/2 that allows you to get information from your opponent for the rest of the game.
I've definitely seen
with no downside.
A few Goblin Guides that do that, and a few Goblin Guides that attack, draw your opponent a card, and then eat a removal spell to the face. Which is not really what you want the card to do.
It sounds very red.
Yeah.
Very chaotic. But Justin having no problems finding his land, fetching out this Tiger to go along with his Stomping Grounds.
Yeah, I mean that's really good for this deck. So it means both you can kind of cast your 2-drop threats like Tarmogoyf and Young Pyromancer and hold up interaction, but the deck is also playing some pretty powerful cards in the 3 and 4 mana slots. I believe typically Ruglife plays both Garruk Relentless and Chandra Torch of Defiance.
Ooh, yeah, those are powerful haymakers.
Yeah, so while some tempo decks do like to kind of keep it a little bit lower to the ground and only sort of play up to 3 drops, the Rug deck is definitely looking to get in there with the big spells at some points.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise when I first watched it play, because it was nothing, and then there was a little bit of removal, and then earlier on, before we got into the top 8, watching Justin play, I was so confused, because I was like, he's playing a Jace and a Vendilion Click? Like, what kind of deck is this? And then I saw the Goblin Guide, and I was like, okay, it's probably tempo.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean Vryn's Prodigy?
No, Big Jace, because we're playing Big Jace as well.
Well, I mean, that card is just really good.
Yeah, look, it's a very good card, and that's
it's got an awful lot of words written on it, and they're basically all good words.
Yeah. It looks like Gideon's using the 1 mana Rampant Growth mode of Green Sun Zenith to shuffle it back into his library and fetch up this Dryad Arbor. If he untaps with it, it's great, but he's versing a deck with red in it, so he could just get blown out even further, and it might be too late to come back from it. I mean,
Well, he doesn't really have a choice. The only other play he could have made would be to Green Suns for 1 and go find maybe a Noble Hierarch if it's in his deck or something like that, or a Birds of Paradise.
yeah,
But
he did end up signing out that Noble Hierarch, but it kind of does the same thing, right? It
Yeah,
just costs one more mana.
it's the same as finding Dryad Arbor, except that you don't have white open to Path to Exile or something like that. He's already cast both Swords and Path to Exile.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know that there's just that much value in having the Savannah open over just finding the more expensive card.
Yeah,
But
I think it's fine. It's pretty low commitment. Siege Rhino on top. Not very close to casting Siege Rhino at the moment, but Justin does enjoy that free information. It might have been enough to help him out if it came out on time, but yeah, with this Burst Lightning, I believe.
yeah, I
taking out the
mean,
Dryad
Siege
Arbor.
Rhino in this board state would be insane.
Yeah.
But Gideon just can't cast it. And this Spellseeker, I imagine, is going to go find a Time Walk and just put Justin even further ahead. Mm-hmm. Which is already true by a pretty disgusting amount.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Spellseeker in these decks. We're trying to find, like, what deck does Spellseeker fit in, because as soon as it was spoiled, it was like, yes, this card is playable, and, like, people are even talking about pointing it, but, or pre-pointing it, because it is a good tutor, you know, it gets Life in the Loam, it gets Time Walk, as we see now, but I think this is probably where it will thrive, you know, because getting Time Walk for a relatively low cost, and also having a body on the board is, like, pretty good plays, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about Spellseeker in this deck is that you cast it with the intention of finding Time Walk, but it also finds Regrowth Trigger Time Walk. It also finds Lightning Bolt. It also finds Price of Progress.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
got,
that's
it's
true,
got it's
yeah.
got a lot of other things that it can't find. Because obviously, if you're just putting Spellseeker in your deck to find Time Walk, you could kind of just play Time Warp and accomplish the same thing without spending 3 points.
Yeah.
It's a little bit worse because you don't get a creature out of the deal and you can't pay the mana of multiple turns. But you also save 3 points in deck building.
Yeah.
So, but when you have, you know, you've got your priority 1 target, but you've also got a suite of other targets that are very real.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of makes Spellseeker a really powerful card.
Absolutely. And we see there was Scavenging Ooze played off the top, and I don't think Gideon can just catch a break, unfortunately. He took a risk playing the Corsair, which felt okay to begin with, but then...
I mean, there was definitely nothing wrong with his end. He's just been kind of really punished by not drawing getting these land drops.
Yeah.
And then having all of his kind of mana sources removed. And just, even the next card is just another 4-drop.
Just taunting you with the Thron the Last Troll, and it truly will be the last, because I do not think it'll be cast this game, unfortunately. Not what you want to see in game 1.
You could definitely say that Gideon's deck was trolling him.
That's right. That's absolutely correct.
He's feeling it.
Yeah, there we go.
Not quite sure what land that was.
That was a Wasteland.
It's a
I
Wasteland?
think, yeah.
Alright.
Nice foily Wasteland, but I think it's a little too late. Maybe if that was his 4th land and he could cast a Siege Rhino in his hand.
Well, if he's not dead to a burn spell, he could assert dominance by wastelanding his own Savannah.
Ooh.
But I don't think he has any lines that'll actually let him win this game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that'll be Justin taking it out in the semis.
Ooh, and that was very strong. I mean, Justin's deck really firing on all cylinders. Unfortunately, Gideon didn't quite get there, possibly due to his land problems. But I mean, that's Magic. I mean, we choose not to play chess for a reason, and this is one of the downfalls to it. So, a hearty victory for Justin going into the top 4. Unfortunately, Gideon will be knocked out of top 8 from here, but congratulations to him for making it all the way from 72 players, if I'm not mistaken.
It was 72 or 73.
Yeah, so quite a few amount of players that they had to fend through to get to this top 8 position. But yeah, congratulations to both players, and we will see you again in the semi-finals of the CANCON Australia Highlander Championship. Thank you very much.